Welcome to Washington State Legends of Soccer and our series Conversations with a Legend Olympics edition. I'm Frank MacDonald and our producer is Leanne Johnson. Today our guest is Jeff Stock, one of our breakthrough homegrowns back in the NASL era, and of course he's from Washington. Jeff attended Stadium High in Tacoma and signed with the original Sounders at age 17. What we'll be talking about today is Jeff's experience in representing the United States at the youth and senior amateur level with an eye on the 1980 Summer Games in Moscow. Jeff, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Frank. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you. I think I got everything right in the introduction, but when you graduate high school in probably June of 78,
Yep.
and the opportunity to play pro is presented to you, did you have Olympic aspirations already by that point? Just tell us where you're at when you graduate and you look into that summer of 78.
Well, I think at 17, you're just trying to figure stuff out. So when I graduated, I had a scholarship to UCLA, and also the Sounders were after me, and I didn't know which way I was going. The Seattle Sounders invited me to a playoff game against LA. I can remember, even though it was 43 years ago, specifically because it was sold out. The Kingdome was sold out. It was the Kingdome at the time. And they announced Jimmy McAllister as Rookie of the Year, and it was a great game, and the crowd was amazing, and it really triggered my mind because remember, I grew up in a baseball family. My dad played professional baseball, and I thought, this might be something I wanted to do. And I think from then on, I guess if it wasn't for Jimmy McAllister, I probably would have been an accountant or something. So I would have gone to UCLA. And as a matter of fact, just to bring this up, Steve Gay recruited me from UCLA. So if I would have gone to UCLA, I'd have been a freshman. And then he got replaced the next year by Ziggy.
Yeah.
So Ziggy would have coached me for 3 years at UCLA. But at the end of the day, I figured, a local boy, Jimmy McAllister, had made it. So that was kind of my hope. And it kind of all, when you're a kid sitting in the stand and you see a local player, I think it brings hope to the kids. And I see all our local players now, and these kids that are 11 and 12 sitting in the stands, the future just looks brighter for U.S. soccer. Yeah. So I made the decision to sign a professional contract, but under an amateur status.
Now explain that, because this may seem like unreal to the followers of the sport and the Olympics today, but before 1984, really, it was a whole different ball game. So explain an amateur contract or an Olympic contract?
Well, and I don't know exactly what the numbers are. I just know what the club told me. But back then, the Olympics were all amateurs, and you couldn't get any endorsement money. You were limited to a certain amount. And when I walked in to sign, they didn't really say I was going to be an amateur. They pretty much just said, this is what we're going to give you. It's $1,000 a month, and it's $1,500 for a living allowance. And by the way, you're also eligible for the Olympics with this. So I said, great, where do I sign? And he said, well, where's your dad? And I said, well, my dad kind of wanted me to go to college to UCLA. And they said, well, we can't allow you to sign this contract. I was only 17, I was an adult. So he said, we need your dad present to sign the contract as a co-signer, because you're not eligible to sign it at 17. So I went back and told my dad, and we kind of got in a row because he wanted me to go to college. And he says, let's just sit on it a week and let's just think about this. You could get hurt, anything could happen, and you won't have an education. So I kind of said, well, okay. In my stubborn ways when I was young, I'm not stubborn anymore, of course. I said, well, I turn 18 August 1st, hell or high water. I'm going to wait till August 1st and I'll just sign then.
Oh,
So and Dad said, well, here, I have an idea. So Jack Daly was a general manager at the time.
yeah.
And he went in to Jack and he said, I really want my kid to have an education. If you can throw in, if he ever wants to go to University of Washington, a scholarship to University of Washington, I'll allow him to sign. And Jack agreed to that. And that's kind of how it went. So
right.
I signed an or an amateur status contract, but I think if I would have asked for more, they just would have, because you're young, you're 17 and you're on a reserve team and they, you're putting a group of young kids that maybe one or two only might make the first team. And the Sounders in Vancouver. And I think Portland came in later with youth teams. They're the only ones that had a reserve team.
Yeah. And I don't know if Mark Peterson signs before you or after you, but I'm sure you guys could talk to each other and say, what are you doing? And because you're both part of the junior national team experience at that point, right?
Yeah, we signed at the exact same time, and he got the same thing I did, and he was just waiting for me so we can go in together.
Okay.
We kind of did everything together through the U.S. stuff, and
So,
actually professionally.
So it's an amateur experience or whatever you'd want to call it. So what did they didn't try to sway you toward one contract? I think they were just fine. Not there's a salary cap, but they pretty much pushed in front of you what was good for them as well. Correct?
I think that's a standard contract when a young kid signs, and I mean, you got nothing to negotiate with. So I didn't care. I just wanted to play.
So are the Olympics in view? What the junior national team that you're part of at that point is doing what and preparing and feeding into what teams at that point? What and who's coaching it?
Well, I think that when we first signed, the Olympics weren't even on our mind. It was just, we knew we had a battle to get to the first team, and we went into the reserves and trained with the reserves under Harry Redknapp. He was the reserve team coach. Bobby Howe and Jimmy Gabriel, God love him, was the first team coaches.
Yeah.
And we got to train with the first team, I think, once a week. So we trained down at Renton Field, and the first team took the one half, and the reserve team took the other half. And then one day a week we played kind of intermingled. Jimmy Gabriel allowed us to practice with the first team.
Okay. Okay. So then you are. When do you remember the first time you got to wear a USA jersey and where you were?
Yeah. It was, I think it was Bellinzona, Switzerland. Okay. And Mark and I got called up. They have a regional pool for the youth team, and it's in Colorado Springs. And we made it through that. And then I believe Durgan was also there. Jeff Durgan, who represented he went on to the Cosmos. We all played on the same youth team. And then they had a final camp, and I think it was Orlando. And then they selected the team, and we were all three on it. And off we go to a tournament in Switzerland. And the first time it's kind of eerie because you're representing, you think about it, but you're representing every kid that puts on a jersey back home. But then you really think about it when the national anthem plays, you're representing everybody at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a neat thing. But once that whistle blows, you don't think about that. It's all, I'll go.
Did it stoke your passion? I mean, you had said a year earlier you're at that playoff game, and that's what lit the initial flame of soccer over baseball. That experience of going to Switzerland and putting on that shirt, did that give you an even greater sense of purpose in the game? Because back then baseball was not an Olympic sport. It was, it was largely just a professional sport in America.
Well, yeah. Once we got done with the tournament there, and we came home, we could see just from being gone for like 4 weeks,
Mhm.
how much our confidence and because at that level, players play is a little faster than what you're used to. The
Yeah.
technique is better, not only the players you're playing with, but against. And so I think it upped us a little level, and I think Harry Redknapp saw that, and we just continue to grow. And but we didn't have Olympics on our mind. It was just back to the reserves. We're playing Simon Fraser, all the college teams, UW, some large or men's local teams, the good
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah.
And then we got called away for camp again for I think 6 weeks to go to who was that?
Was it the Pan Am
Oh, it
Games?
was Italy. It was
Oh,
Milan. Milan had a
okay.
tournament, Inter Milan, and we got to play from a team from Germany. And in Milan, they were local club. That was their reserve teams, and you grow every time you go away playing with, and the guys you're playing with are coming from all over the United States, and you see them again, and
Yeah.
you get some camaraderie going, and it's just kind of neat representing the team. It never got taken for granted, but you felt at first it was like, wow, I'm in a U.S. jersey. And then you go, okay, like the second time, I'm in a U.S. jersey. Now I gotta step up my game. So you grow every time. I think you get in there
Yeah.
until you get to a certain point where you're used to it, and you played enough games where you're actually looking out for the new guys on there, and because they're wide-eyed as well.
What was the biggest uh, experience, crowd, where you started to get a real taste of what international soccer might be? Did you go on the Pan Am Games?
I did, but the biggest experience was playing in Honduras for
Okay.
the youth CONCACAF. Um, when we landed at the airport,
Mhm.
there was army men with machine guns by our plane. When we went to our hotel, we had a police escort on the bus, and you're going, wow. And when we got to the stadium, again, there was military with machine guns standing by the field with a packed house of about 40,000 people, and it's definitely an international game. You don't see that in the United States. And
No.
as a 18-year-old kid, you're just you got to take off that intimidation and just go play.
Yeah. Yeah. That it is quite something to play in Central America, to
Yeah,
this day, I think. Uh, and then the Pan Am Games were in, I want to say somewhere
Puerto
in.
Rico,
Okay. Okay.
Puerto Rico.
Tell us about that, because then that's is that 78 or 79?
I think it was 79. It was
Okay.
I think it was July of 79.
Okay.
And pretty much it was taken from the youth pool.
Hmm.
And there's 3 or 4 players taken from the youth team, and it's just kind of mirage. You just as you get in the system and you grow, and they say, hey, Mark, Jeff Durgan, Perry Vanderbeck, who played for the Tampa Bay Rowdies.
Hmm.
He says we're having Olympic trials, so Colorado Springs, we'd like you to join, the Olympic team and see what you can do. And it
Uh,
obviously goes up another level, because instead of high school players, we are playing with college kids now, and,
okay.
ranging up to 22 years old, because they're already amateurs, when they're in college. So it was a different. Again, the game gets faster. It's more knowledge, but for it actually gets easier, because as the game gets quicker, uh, they respect your space a little bit as long as you learn to get your first touch right. If you don't get it right, they're all over you. But I always found it easier when better players are around you. They make you look good, especially on the Sounders that we had on the Sounders.
Okay. Now, okay, so you're now a year away from Olympics. That's at least
Yeah.
got to be entering your mind. But at the same time, I can't remember when the political implications of 1980 start to drift in. But in any recollection in your mind of what you're thinking of? Well, in 1980, I'm going to be playing more with the first team for the Sounders, and there's this Olympic possibility. What are the things?
Frank, we were still on the reserve team, Mark and I. I think Jeff Durgan had actually squeezed into the senior team and had a few games with them and was playing well, which Mark and I look up to and say, hey, if Jeff can do it, we can do it as well. I think when we went to the PanAm Games, we didn't really have the Sounders on our mind. I mean, we're playing for our country again. It was a preliminary to the Olympics. It was the teams got better. I mean, we played. I can't remember the first game we played. We won, but we got waxed by Cuba, and we played Argentina, and we actually had a good game. We lost by I think it was 3 or 4-0, but we actually. I know it sounds weird when you lose 4-0, but we kind of held our own. I mean, we were down 3 goals, I think, right from the beginning, and we just kind of, pulled it by the bootstraps and hung in there. So after that, we went back, and remember, I'm still 18. Mark's still, I think he just turned 19, and we're just going back to the reserve team. That was 1979.
Yeah.
And then Jimmy Gabriel, I think, got replaced by Alan Hinton.
Okay.
And we had gone, I think we got back in August, kept training. And then the Sounders sent us over in October to England for 4 months. Okay. So we didn't get back till February. So for the whole year of that 16 months, we were probably with the team only half the time because we were traveling, overseas or whatever.
Okay.
And when we got back from England in February, the team started getting together for preseason, and I can't remember if we heard over in England or, I mean, you're a 19-year-old kid at the time, 18, 19-year-old, and I didn't know anything about politics, and I didn't really care. I just wanted to all I cared about was soccer.
Yeah.
But we heard that we weren't going to the Olympics, but actually it proved to be good for Mark and I, because we missed the Olympics, which would have been a lifetime memory, because it was in Moscow, and it would have been a great experience. But I think the Olympics were in July and August, and we would have been in June with the Olympic team training for 4 months in preparation. And because we didn't go, lo and behold, Mark and I made the first team. Up to our huge, I think we were 22-7 run in 1980.
Yeah.
So it's just fate,
Very special team. You guys took your opportunities and ran with it. That was an amazing year. I suppose there were people that were you said you developed some camaraderie in that Olympic unit, and I bet there were some who didn't come back to it, 25-17, or maybe and they didn't play before 25,000. So the Olympic dream was probably a bigger blow to them than maybe you, right?
I think especially the college players, because the good ones were going to get signed anyway, but they've been looking forward to this, for 2 or 3 years, and I was so young and just got signed. The previous year, it wasn't even on my mind. It just kind of came through the youth system, and then the Olympics, and so Mark Peterson and I just kind of gradually it was like climbing a ladder. And we didn't have time to think about anything because it was, oh, you're touring again with the US team, and I'll be back in 4 weeks, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So last question here. When you saw 4 years later, so 1984, and the games are in LA, and well, actually soccer was sprinkled around the country and then back to LA, and you see the great crowds, and actually I suppose it probably led to us hosting the World Cup, and the fact that pros were now playing. Did you watch those games, or just think about them in a different way than you had
Are you talking
before?
about the Olympics or the World Cup?
The Olympics of '84.
Oh, yes. Yes. And you know, what I really thought about was, I mean, and even the college kids that we played with, Maroney and some really good kids that got signed professionally. I didn't think about us. I thought about the track guys. I mean, they worked 4 years going for this. You know, I mean, we had something else to do, and they, you know, they go in 2 or 3 gold medals, they can go cash out. Well, they didn't get the opportunity, you know, and Mark and I got the opportunity that it actually worked out. But I just think of the track people and the swim people, and that they train. I mean, these kids train, you know, 8 hours a day for 2 weeks out of the year that they're looking forward. Okay, it's 3 years, it's 2 years, and I bet they had it marked on the calendar, and all of a sudden the rug gets pulled out of them. And I don't think, and that's what, I mean, I have no idea what it was over to this day now. I know it was because Russia invaded somewhere, but when political gets involved with sports, you know, I think sports is sports and political is political, and just leave everything alone, because, you know, the athletes get hurt. The athletes get hurt. Those people that sacrifice 3 years out of their life. I mean, it's a lifetime commitment for those guys, every day, every year for 3 years. Yeah. And they look forward to that, and they didn't get the opportunity.
Yeah.
That's what I think about.
Okay. We're glad we had this time with you, and everything, as you said, it kind of worked out, and we're so glad for that because that was a very special season, 1980, and then you went on and contributed more and more, played for the Sounders, Stars, and so on. And so thank you. Thanks for sharing this story. It's a unique perspective, Jeff, but I know you're speaking for Mark here today, so that's great. So Jeff, thanks for sharing your story and your contributions to the game, which are many. And thanks to our producer, Leanne Johnson, and thanks to all of you for watching Conversations with a Legend Olympic Edition. For more on the history of Washington State soccer and to learn more about Washington State Legends of Soccer, go to wasoccerlegends.org. And we appreciate your support, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Frank.